Hello, everybody. This is Josh Price, and you are listening to the Mark Price for Three podcast. Each episode, my dad will be talking NBA basketball, sharing some coaching and instruction, and of course, talking about his faith. Without further delay, here's my dad, Mark Price.
Welcome back to episode 75 of the Mark Price for Three podcast. We all survived the eclipse. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great. Laura and I were actually in our car driving to go babysit our granddaughter. Right when the eclipse was happening, we kind of forgot about it. And we pulled up, saw all these people, out in their front yards. And so we kind of just pulled over and looked up for about 2 seconds. Of course, we didn't have the full eclipse that you guys had.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask if you were in the path of whatever.
No, we didn't get the full total thing, but it was still kind of cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was almost like a storm came in, like when it gets dark outside your house right before it gets real stormy, and then it left. Yeah. And that was pretty much it. But, looking at it through the glasses was pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So, once in a lifetime thing. But
yeah, for sure. I saw some of the pictures on Twitter and stuff from Cleveland.
Yeah.
And it looked especially like it from, I guess the Guardians had their opening day.
Right.
So that was kind of a weird deal, but
it's so Cleveland.
But they got there's some really cool pictures though.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so Cleveland though to have opening day on the eclipse. But anyway, all right. Cavs, speaking of Cleveland, the Cavs, it's not good right now. 3-7 in the last 10 games. They've dropped to the 5 seed at this point. They're messing around with not even being in the top 7 or 8. Pacers and the Sixers are making a late surge. Running out of time here. What are your thoughts on the Cavs?
Yeah, it was a rough West Coast trip for sure. Yeah. A couple blowout games, also a couple they could have had that they gave away, especially the last one really hurt.
Yeah.
Up 26 and to lose that game. That takes a lot out of you, especially when you've been on a long West Coast trip and to lose that last game like that. But so they got 3 left? 3 or 4 left.
Yeah, something like that.
We'll see how they finish, but it's it's gotten tight now. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 teams there, and it could jockey one way or the other. But disappointing that they've dropped to 5th. They've been top 4 all year. I still think they're a top 4 team when healthy, but that's been the key, right? The problem all year long. I mean, it's just I've never seen a season, I don't think. You had stretches of injuries, but I mean, starting literally the first week of the season,
yep,
till now we're heading to almost the whole season. I mean, they have had injuries nonstop the whole season long. So from that perspective, you almost got to give them a little bit of a break, I guess,
right.
That they're in as good a position as they are, considering that.
Yeah.
But man, I haven't seen anything like it as far as like a whole season just full of, different guys. I mean, not having your lineup basically the whole season long. So they're in a strange place, that's for sure, going into the playoffs. We've talked about that before, not really having that chemistry because they haven't played together all season long. And so it's like you've just kind of thrown lineups out there and different guys have played well at different times, but having everybody on the same page right now, it doesn't look like it is at the moment.
It's interesting. And we will have Sam Miko on next week, heading into the playoffs and just talking about what he knows. He's written some pretty eye-opening articles here recently, or at least shared some pretty interesting news. And so we will have Sam on to talk about a few of those things just, for next week. But yeah, but the thing that you mentioned the other day when we were talking is the East is still kind of wide open. I mean, obviously Boston's head of the class, but there's a lot of the teams that they're, the Sixers have had injuries and they've played weird lines. So it's still open. And I guess if we want to look at a positive, if we're looking for some silver lining here, it would be that the East is still pretty open. And NC State, we'll talk about the tournament here in a minute. NC State figured out a way to make a pretty good run after a terrible year, had lost 4 in a row going to the tournament. So it can be done. Will it be done with this team? I don't know.
Yeah, and it definitely can be done. I've said that from the beginning. I don't think the East is that strong. Obviously, the Celtics are the cream of the crop, like you talked about. but Milwaukee hasn't, they're struggling right now.
Right.
The Knicks are playing okay, but they got injuries too. So they don't have their full roster. And then
Right.
you got upstarts like, Orlando. You don't know what they're going to do come playoff time or
Yep.
things like that. So I mean, if the Cavs can somehow get it together, they could still make a run in these playoffs. Like you said, Embiid's getting back. You don't know how good they're going to be. He's been out for a long time. Everybody just assumes they're going to be tough now that he's back, but that's not always the case. And so, yeah, I mean, it's there. The opportunity's there. But so far, at least the way they've kind of finished the season, a lot of people are a little bit down, I guess, on the Cavs right now, but that can always change in a week's time, right?
Right. Right.
Win
That's right.
win 2 or 3 games in a row and get feeling better about yourself, and things can change quickly.
It will be interesting too. We've talked about this throughout the season, how guys take load management now, take some games off. I know LeBron and AD didn't play the other night, I saw, and I don't know why that was. Don't really follow the Lakers, but uh, when the playoffs come, they're not going to do that. They're not taking a day off. And so maybe we can see who's finally healthy and who's not. The question is, can they put that all together and make it work? I don't know. It'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
that's the key. Who's going to be playing well, and when it's crunch time.
That's right. All right. So Sam will be with us next week. Speaking of March Madness, it's all over. It's hard to believe. Feels like we
Man,
just started talking about it and it's over.
exactly. It's 3 weekends, right? And that's the beauty of March Madness. I love that. The
Yeah.
NBA playoffs kind of, man, they kind of drag on and on and on, but it's like the tournament starts and it's over in 3
That's
weekends,
right.
man. That's the beauty of March Madness, I think. And
Yeah.
so what a great tournament. I think we can easily say it doesn't happen always, but both on the women's side and the men's side, the best team
One.
won.
Right.
South Carolina was the best women's team all year long, and UConn was the best men's team all year long. And they both were able to finish the job, which is not always the case.
No.
But they both were the cream of the crop, and even all the way through. I mean, they both won by double digits
Yeah.
in the championship game and showed their dominance. And so, hats off to both South Carolina and UConn for pulling it off, and UConn back to back, which is
Right. Even
which
harder.
is very difficult to do. Hadn't been done in a long time.
Yep.
And so, on top of that, you got all the rumors going on with
So,
Calipari jumping ship and going to Arkansas,
yeah.
and so yeah, it's going to be a lot of interesting college basketball still here for a few weeks until everything shakes out.
Yeah, you got a lot of guys in the portal. Let's start with the women's tournament because it was amazing. I saw last night where I believe it was 18.7 million people watched the championship game. It was the biggest game, and I believe what I read, and you can always believe what you read on the internet, but it said 18.7 million was the biggest, most watched basketball game, men's or women's, and I'm pretty sure that included the NBA in the last 5 years. That's how huge that game was. Assuming that's true, that's incredible for the ladies. It's incredible that women's basketball had that kind of a following. I can tell you, I work at a facility that is open on Sunday, and we were dead at 3 o'clock. I mean, we had one person in the building shooting and taking shots. No one else was there. And we're typically slammed on a Sunday. It was incredible. And I believe that was the case pretty much everywhere. I think everybody shut it down just to watch that game and see Caitlin Clark. So I was most happy for the women's basketball, the sport of women's basketball and women's sports in general. It's amazing what they did. I think what you and I talked about is, can they now take that and keep that momentum going? Because it was incredible what she did.
No question about it. And there's people that love Caitlin Clark. There's people that obviously are jealous of Caitlin Clark.
Right.
You got haters on the other side of Caitlin Clark, but I think you can't argue with the fact that she has brought the light to women's basketball
100%.
and brought the interest that has never been there before. And there's been great players before Caitlin Clark,
Right.
and there'll be great players after her. But for some reason, And who knows what that is, the combination of maybe just playing at Iowa, a team that's never done anything before, that kind of Hoosiers mentality type thing, or whatever it might be. She captured the attention of everybody, everybody that likes basketball, on the men's side, women's side, whatever it is. She brought an interest to women's basketball that's never been there before. And so, obviously they didn't win the championship. South Carolina just was better than Iowa. They were the best team all year long. And I thought it was awesome that Don Staley, mentioned that, and thanked Caitlin for raising the bar for women's basketball, and kudos to her for doing that, because the one thing that concerned me a little bit, and we talked about it, was a lot of, whether it be WNBA players or, there was a lot of kind of, yeah, Caitlin's this, but she's not going to be that. And,
Right.
and I'm like, regardless of what she ends up being at the WNBA level, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is an opportunity for women's basketball for the first time in our lifetime, that people are kind of care about it.
Yeah.
And so don't ruin that. That
Yeah.
would just be my message to all the girls out there.
Yeah.
The ones that like Caitlin, the ones that don't like her, but let's acknowledge what she's done for women's basketball. And it's not saying that maybe she'll be the greatest player ever or whatever it is. For this moment in time, she's the big reason of why people are interested in women's basketball that never have been before.
Yes, 100%. And I think that she wasn't just a great shooter. That's the thing. I mean, and her team as well. It's not like it was just Caitlin and, four other, young ladies. No, they were a really good team. I mean, she had pieces around her, as we always talk about, with teams.
Right.
And her passing was incredible. Now, defense we could talk about, because I do think she took some time off on defensive end, but incredible. She wasn't just a great shooter, but she was a really good shooter at that too. But when it came down to South Carolina, they were just, and I think we'll talk about this with UConn, they just had more tools. And to Dawn Staley's credit, she played, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 players. And they were all like, you love to see that watching team play. They were all willing to sacrifice, probably, for the championship, to play a few minutes here, do their role. They all knew their role. It was just great. It was great for women's sports, but it was also fun to watch. It was very, very fun to watch. And obviously, by the numbers, I'm not the only one that thought that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. It's definitely they've raised the bar, the level of play, the skill level from the girls was at a higher level than it's ever been.
Yep.
And so that's a good thing. I'm sure there's a lot more girls today that are maybe going out, picking up a basketball and going out to their, just like the boys used to do. There's going to be a lot more girls are showing up at your gym, getting up shots, or,
That's right.
or whatever it might be. It's going to have a ripple effect, I think, and hopefully in a positive way for young girls that, and let's face it, Caitlin Clark just looks like a girl next door kind of thing. And so that's going to have a big impact on a lot of young girls that say, well, if Caitlin Clark can do it, maybe I can do it.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, moving on. You mentioned it, Calipari. I think that one we won't go coach by coach, team by team, but that one I think took a lot of people by surprise. I think the rumors are the NIL package may have been, because I don't know, somebody said he may be taking a pay cut to go to Arkansas. However, there's allegedly a $6 million NIL package for going to get players. It's almost like in the NBA going to a very rich owner that's willing to spend whatever it takes to win. I don't know if that's true or not. Again, this is just stuff that we get on, the internet. But what are your thoughts on Calipari? I did not see that one coming.
Well, I can just tell you this much for sure. He's not taking a pay cut. So they could report it however they want to report it.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you get into the weeds of that contract, I guarantee you he's not making less money. That's one thing. The other thing is, they'll be eating a lot of chicken, it sounds like. Is going to be dumping money into the program for NIL and those other things. But yeah, interesting. It's one of those things. Sometimes be careful what you wish for, right? Like, going back, some people like Calipari, others don't like him, this and that, but you can't argue with the level of talent and what he brought into the University of Kentucky
Right.
and all the griping and kind of sniping at Calipari the last couple of years from the fan base there. All of a sudden now,
Yeah.
he's going to be coming to Rupp Arena coaching Arkansas. And so,
Yes.
sometimes be careful what you wish for. I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of good coaches out there that Kentucky's going to try to get and all of that. But the one thing you can always say about Calipari was there was always a ton of interest in his program.
Yep.
And will that be the same now that he's gone for Kentucky? I'm sure it will to a certain extent. But yeah, and I was looking at this and it's not usually the case, but on paper, this all started with SMU getting rid of their coach, right?
Right.
So they fire their coach, and then Andy Infeld at USC takes the SMU job, which is most people consider a lesser job.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So
right.
then Musselman, who's in the SEC in Arkansas, and he takes the USC job, which a lot of people would consider a lesser job right now than where Arkansas is at.
Yeah.
And then Calipari leaves Kentucky, who's, one of the blue blood pinnacle, and goes to Arkansas. And that move is looked at as taking a lesser job.
Right.
So just a unique kind of weird kind of scenario, because most of the time you see coaches moving to take the bigger, better, or whatever in people's minds job. But it's just been an interesting turn of events, within the last couple of weeks with those coaching changes.
I have to wonder if I'll put on my tinfoil hats for a second, because we've talked about this. I'm sure we're going to talk about this when it came to this year's tournament. It's not Calipari's first rodeo either. And when you think of Calipari in Kentucky, you think of one and done. You think of, brings in 5 guys, 5 stars. The next year they're gone. He brings in another one. He brings in another one. And it made, again, he was in the same tournament and actually lost to a team that we've talked about that was experienced.
Right.
It's not his first rodeo. And so this could be a chance to reboot for him. This could be a chance because he couldn't do it in Kentucky. I have a feeling the Kentucky fan base probably wants to still see the 5-star recruits, the number 1 recruiting class, just like at Duke. Maybe the only way to fix that is to say, let me just go over to Arkansas where I've got a ton of NIL money. Let me go get all the 5 best NIL players that are out there because I'm Cal and they want to play for me because they know I'll put them in the NBA kind of thing. Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a conspiracy theory, but let me just reboot. And he probably couldn't reboot at Kentucky, but whoever comes in there could do that now because they're not Cal. And so they could say, hey, we're going to change our philosophy. I'm going to go out and, and they'll get their NIL players too because it's Kentucky. Who doesn't want to play for Kentucky? So it could be very interesting to see how that goes and to see who they get. That'll be, and I know last night Nate Oates already said I'm out. I'm staying where I'm at. I heard somebody talk about the buyouts on some of these coaches. I think Nate Oates is $18 million.
Right.
$18 million to not coach here. That's crazy. So that'll have an effect as well. But I do think that Kentucky will back up the truck for whoever they need to go get. That program's just too important to just take a flyer on somebody.
Yeah, and the word is they're going to go hard for Dan Hurley at UConn. But if you're Dan Hurley, the only reason you would move, right, is to double your salary, right? Because it has nothing to do with you can't win at UConn. You just won back-to-back national championships, and so that'll be interesting to watch because, like you said, they're going to back the Brinks truck up, and they're going to. Entice Hurley to leave. I don't know. And on one sense, it's like, hey, I don't want to leave. I won 2 national championships here. We've already built something special. On the other side is I've already won 2 championships here. What more can I do?
Right.
Let's go take the money and try to do it somewhere else. Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of arguments to be made, but if you're Dan Hurley, you're in a pretty darn good situation.
It's a pretty good spot to be in.
That way.
That's a pretty good spot to be in. I am hearing Scott Drew, and it's not like I have insider information. That's at least on the internet. That's what everybody's talking about is, he's kind of done his thing at Baylor and he's won at a high level and, could be a good hire. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But okay, next up, I got to announce the winner of our bracket challenge because we have a special prize for them. Joe's Picks was number one. Elo for 3 was very, very close. And actually, Hoop's mom was right there. Driveway Free Throws was right there. Pete Chilcutt, I don't know who that was, and I don't know if they did that because, maybe they thought that, you know, I appreciate the name. Pete Chilcutt was right there. But at the end of the day, Joe's Picks won the whole thing, had UConn. I think he led most of the way. He didn't miss too many picks. So for Joe's Picks, if you're out there, email me, Aaron@aaronconrad.com. Mark and I are going to have you on as a guest on our next pod, or at least on an upcoming pod. And we want to hear how you did it. we want to know how you did it. If you're a UConn fan, did you choose them because of that? So we've got questions for you. And we also have a 50, 40, 90 equals 25 shirt that we'll get to you as well. So I'll get all the details offline and we'll put that all together. But congratulations and thanks to everybody for being in it. Mark and I did not win.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Joe's pick as well. And we definitely want to get you on the podcast because, I definitely want to learn how to put brackets together because obviously I'm not very good at it because I didn't do well at all. Although I always try to pick underdogs, and I think maybe I should learn my lesson and go with the team that's been the best team all year long. But congratulations to Joe's picks, and look forward to having that conversation here soon.
That'll be fun. And you're right. So that brings up a point. When it came to the tournament this year, my son pointed this out. I don't think there was any buzzer beaters. Normally it's filled with a last second shot, or I can't think of any. I'm sure there was one or two, but most, and it's not like they weren't close games. So it's very interesting. They were close games, but it didn't come down to a half court shot. You always have these Cinderella moments. Obviously Kentucky being beat in the first round was one, and we had a couple Cinderella teams, but it was interesting. We didn't have a lot of buzzer beaters, to your point about taking the underdogs.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There wasn't the Bryce Drew, inbounds pass or the, whatever Christian Laettner full court shots or all those crazy things. But you did have the underdog, getting some upsets early on, and having an 11 seed get all the way to the Final Four with NC State, who had an incredible run.
Mm-hmm.
But and Zach Edey, he got to showcase how good he really was this year. And even losing last night, 37 points. That guy he left it out there. The whole tournament was so dominant and just ran into a team that was better and had more tools and more weapons. But, not too many March Madness runs, individual runs, were much better than what Zach Edey did this year.
Yeah. And he, at his size, you can either we've seen guys, I'm sure you've played against guys that are that size, but not real gifted. They're just big. And that's not the case for Edey. And maybe that was the case out of high school. I saw where he was very under recruited, like a 3-star or something like that. Yeah. So good on Purdue for taking the shot with him because a lot of people turned him, walked away from him. He really did. And I do wonder if he ran out of gas last night. They kept talking about it. He plays 40 minutes. He plays 40 minutes. He plays 40 minutes. And within the next 5 minutes of that, they're like, Edey looks tired. He looks tired. Yeah. He looks tired. And his production dropped after that. Now, it could be that, UConn changed their scheme on him a little bit, but he came out on fire. He was carrying, I think he had 16 points in a row or something. Yeah. And it wasn't long after that where I don't know if it was adrenaline or, it was a long tournament. He had been playing 40 minutes a game, and I don't know if he ran out of gas. I don't know. I have no idea. It just seemed like his production dropped a little bit. He was still out there. He was still causing problems, but not like that first. You're like, if this guy keeps this up, he's going to go for 50 tonight. They didn't have an answer for him.
No, he was tremendous. It'll be interesting to see which NBA team gives him a shot. A lot of people are saying he can't be a great NBA player, and maybe he won't be, but I don't know. He's a pretty impressive guy down low. And so, I know the NBA is more of a stretch him out 3-point shooting thing now, but it'd be interesting to see what team takes a chance on him. And, I wish him all the best because I love to see a good big guy and, and a guy that can score in the low post and he can definitely do that.
Yeah. And they had good point guard play last night too. I thought both point guards on both teams understood pace, understood what their team needed, weren't afraid to go in the lane. I mean, it was a throwback, in my opinion. That game last night was a little bit of a throwback to when we had bigs and when point guards weren't just shooting threes like crazy. They took them if open, but they didn't force anything. They fed guys. I mean, that to me, I really enjoyed watching the game last night. I don't know what the numbers will be if people enjoyed it, but it was a throwback. It was fun to watch.
Doubt. It was really good basketball. I know UConn kind of stretched it out in the second half, but the first half, and even Charles Barkley at halftime, that was he said that was a really well played first half by both teams. And it was, to your point, it was these two giants in there, battling each other, and the other guys both teams running their offense and weren't forcing and just jacking up threes. And, if they had them, they took them. But yeah, really well played game. Kudos to both coaches, both teams. Well played.
Yeah. Anything else that stood out to you as we put a bow on March Madness? Anything else that stood out to you in the tournament? I know we've talked about the age of the teams, and again, we saw it again last night as they're introducing the team, grad transfer, all that kind of thing. But then they did mix in some young guys. So UConn's going to be good for a while. I think they're just going to plug and play for a bit. And again, to your point about Hurley, I'm not sure I'd run away from that because he could probably maybe go for 3 now. But anything else that stood out to you as you watched the tournament?
Yeah, I think I like, just from the simple fact, I like that teams are getting older. I like that kids are staying longer. I know the NIL probably has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
I still am not a big fan of team hopping,
Yeah.
The whole rent a player thing, but it is what it is. But, I like the fact that, I think I sent I saw somewhere it showed like the ages of the teams in the Final Four, and how, there were very few freshmen, very few freshman starters, one here that, a couple here or there, but as a whole, all the teams were older, and I think you get a better brand of basketball with more experienced players out on the court. I just do. Nothing against the very talented freshmen and all that, but they just haven't played as much basketball, and so there's a lot. You could just see the skill level in a lot of different ways from a kid. The UConn kid, the transfer. My mind's going blank right now. The transfer from Rutgers, Spencer. Right.
Spencer, yeah.
That's a kid. Does that kid have a chance of being an NBA guy? I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably not, but he just knew how to play, right?
Right.
4 or 5 year guy. His, mental capacity, jump stops, slowing down, getting into the paint. It caused all kinds of problems for Purdue. And that was just because of experience. He wasn't hurried. He wasn't rushed. And you're seeing a lot more of that now out there on different teams, guys that have just know how to play the game because they've been around 4 or 5 years. And so I think that's a good thing for college basketball.
Agree. Caitlin Clark is a good example.
Yep. As
big as the moments were, I talked about the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Entire, women's basketball in many ways was on her shoulders. Right. 18.7 million people cared enough to wonder how she would do. Would she, and the moment never got too big for her. Some of that's just her, but at the same time, she's not a freshman. The girl that was guarding her the year before really struggled, and there was some controversy with how they, went at each other, and she took it personal and got better, developed, came back the next year, and she gave Caitlin pretty much all she could handle in that game. Last night, to your point, the players that were on the court, they would mix in some freshmen, but the moment wasn't too big. They'd seen this before. They'd played in, I don't know if they've played in an arena that size, but, they've played in critical moments. And so that's one thing you didn't see was it Bobby Hurley that threw up or something, or no, actually he had a different issue, but I remember when he was like a freshman and he had to leave the game because he was literally just, overwhelmed by the moment. And you didn't see that in this tournament. And I think it has to do with the experience. And so, now the off season starts and every college team's they're going to go shopping.
Yeah.
They're going to go shopping, and apparently Coach Cal's got a nice big checkbook to fill the cupboard with. So we will keep an eye on that, but I can't wait till it's back. I saw 213 days this morning. So start the clock, start the class. That's what we do in Carolina is we look forward to the next season. All right. On that, as we go to the faith segment, obviously this was kind of an easy one, but First Corinthians 9:24 says, "Do you not know that those who run a race all run, but only the one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win." It's pretty easy for a championship game, very similar to the tournament. 68 teams started that thing and only one walks away with the prize. What were your thoughts on that verse and just kind of how we live our lives that way?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite verses. It's just, it just speaks to, being intentional.
Yeah.
It speaks to consistency. It speaks to discipline, the things that it takes to win, a race. And obviously, you saw that. I saw many interviews with Dan Hurley over the course and just talked about, their goal was to win that prize. And
Yeah.
these are the things that they were doing to make that happen.
Yeah.
And so you don't just show up and play the games and,
Yeah.
roll the ball out. I mean, these coaches and these players have been preparing and, being held accountable and even though they're getting paid, different, Dan Hurley spoke to being coaching them hard. And he's like, well, they're making more than they ever have. So yeah, I'm going
Yeah.
to coach them hard. It's
That's
like,
right.
you want to make the money, you got to,
Yeah.
you got to do the things, the hard work, as far as our faith walk with Christ, it speaks to the intentionality. Ultimately we know we're ultimately going to win, not here on this earth, but when we go to be with Jesus,
Yeah.
one day. But yet the sanctification process, I know that's a big word, big Bible word, but the growing process of us becoming more and more Christ-like on this earth while we're living, that takes discipline, that takes, intentionality, it takes accountability. It takes all those things, to make sure we're spending time in God's word, that we're praying, that we're surrounding ourselves, we're going to church, we're getting good Bible teaching, all those things to be disciplined so that we put ourselves in a position to win, and winning is that we can please our Father and that he can look down and say, well done, my good and faithful servant.
Yeah. I was thinking about the race part of that. And, a lot of people, maybe not. I know if you ever tried a 5K, your first one, you go out and you do it. And then if you do another one, you're like, wow, you learn a lot in that 5K. And you're glad you finished. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I got a 5K done. But then the next time you do one, you maybe change things up a little bit, maybe get a little better pair of shoes, maybe don't wear a certain outfit, or what I'm saying. And that applies to 5K, 10K, half marathon, whatever it might be. But as you go out, you experience and you learn. Doesn't mean that you didn't do it. You didn't do it. You still did, but you learn some things. And I think that's true in what this is saying as well. We're gonna run the race, and we talked about experience. We've talked about it last week. We've talked about it on this podcast. Just like those players have that experience, I think we have that in our life too. Doesn't mean we're not going to make mistakes, but you and I've talked about this before too, where Christ said, go and sin no more.
Right.
Because things are going to happen, right? And that's not a pass to have those things happen, but they will happen. And so just don't do that anymore. Like, use the experience you've gained. Like a
Right.
player in a basketball game, they learn. And that's why we just talked about experience. You want those players that have been in the moment. We're going to be in those moments in our faith. We're not always going to get them right, but that's how you win the race. Is you just do better the next time. Learn from that experience of the race. I don't know.
Yeah, no question. There's also a verse, whatever you do, right, in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And that's how we win the race, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when we're everything that we do, and we're not there, like,
Yeah.
we talked about, can we say that everything we do is, is for the glory of God? Probably not every
Yeah.
day, but to have that mindset of whatever we do and whatever we speak,
Yeah.
whatever we think, our actions toward others, whatever we do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
That's the end goal. That's winning. That's winning the race.
Yeah.
That's winning the game when we're living a life. And obviously that can only be done through the power of the Holy Spirit that's
Right.
given within us. We're not capable in our own flesh of doing that.
Yep.
But like you said, as we walk and as we fall and as we make mistakes and we learn and we, God forgives us and we move forward and, let's don't make the same mistake again. Right. I mean, let's grow, let's learn, let's continue our path toward, standing face to face with him one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff again this week, Mark. Next week, we will be back for episode 76. Possibly have Joe's picks on. I got to work on that offline and connect and find out if we can make that happen. We will have Sam Amico on. That is confirmed. And so we will be looking ahead at the playoffs. Playoffs. I almost feel like that with the Cavs right now. Playoffs? Like, seriously, I might have to put that clip in. But no, we will be talking playoffs. And we got Sam, our good friend Sam, who's been around the team, that probably has a little bit more insight and wisdom as to what's going on and what could be ahead for them. So looking forward to our good friend Sam being back on next week, episode 76. And again, congrats to Joe's picks on winning our bracket challenge.
Yeah, congratulations, Joe. I don't know if your name's Joe or you just use Joe's picks, but I'll just for purposes, Joe, until we know different. Congratulations. Well done, my friend. You won the prize.
You finished the race.
You finished the race, man. That's I can't quite say the same for me, but there's always next year. What'd you say? 217 days or something like that?
213.
213 days. Okay.
Clock's ticking.
But anyway, it's been fun, man. It's been fun. This run, March Madness, is always a blast. Now we get to change our focus more to the NBA. I mean, actually, the play-in stuff will probably be happening within the next couple of weeks.
Right.
So, it'll start moving quick. And, it'll be fun following the Cavs, of course, but the whole NBA playoff scenario and kind of seeing what the matchups are going to be. All that stuff will be kind of falling into place here probably in the next week.
Yep. Absolutely. And so we'll have Sam on to talk about that. And as always, thank you, Mark, for your time. And we'll be back next week.
All right, Aaron. Always a blast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Mark Price for 3 podcast. Remember to subscribe, like, review, and share. I'm Josh Price, and we will talk to you again on the next episode.